So bear with me. I definitely want things to be interactive. Hillary said that she would lead and interrupt with questions as we're moving along. So I look forward to as many questions as you guys can possibly ask. Today I'm going to present on Western Saddle Fit. As she said, we're Saddle Up. We're in Gilcrest, Colorado. I'm right on Highway 85 in right before Greeley. So typically we have 300 plus new and used saddles, and it takes all those saddles. If anyone's done a saddle fit with me before, you probably know it can take a ton of saddles to find the right fit for your horse. Our goal at Saddle Up, our little motto is fit the horse, fit the rider, fit the budget. I have a lot of people that come in and say, I don't care about me. I just want it to fit my horse. On the flip side of that, I have a lot of people that I finally find a saddle that does fit their horse, and it's not the color that they're looking for, the seat style, and so forth. And so it's a hard mix these days. Part of the, well, I shouldn't say part of the issue. The big issue is we have selectively bred our horses over the years. We have a ton of different conformations. Draft crosses have become big in the mix. We have a lot of gaited in the mix, and we no longer have a standard quarter horse body. So that is definitely one of the many tricks. Again, our motto, fit the horse, fit the rider, fit the budget. We definitely try to honor all those things. There is not, in my opinion, a compromise when it comes to fitting the saddle on the horse. There's several key points. And if you want to move forward to the next slide, Hillary, sorry about that. We will talk about that. It's a coming.
Sorry, I was muted. Okay. I was trying to tell you that I had all these windows in front of it, so I couldn't actually advance it forward.
Totally good. Totally good.
Maybe. Now I'm like editing it by accident. I'll try it like that. There we go. Okay.
So there it is, our goal at Saddle Up. Both horse and rider, definitely equally important. I just had somebody come in today, very big rider, new draft horse, and the dad had a budget of about $1,000. It's always tricky to match all those things, but we work very diligently to try to do so and do our best. So you can go ahead and move on to the next slide. Sorry. Saddle fit, like so many other things, has highly evolved over the years. Some of those big factors, and I'm going to pull over a saddle if you don't mind switching me to video. That would be great.
Let's stop share.
So on any Western saddle, I don't know if you guys can see me okay. It looks like I'm still
It looks
small.
Good to me. You're small. We can see you.
Okay, no worries. So you get many people that come in and they want to tell me that they need a full quarter horse bar. Well, the measurement that you have when you go to the swell of the saddle, where the saddle meets the bars, that is where we take our gullet measurement from. So a lot of my McCalls have just a 6.5 inch gullet, but they have a really nice flare to the bar. So very wide in the flare. They've opened up this back gullet hole, which is a much more important piece than this front gullet hole, and nobody asks about that. A lot of the older saddles in the Western world, we've got a 3.5 inch gullet opening here. McCall does at least a 4.5 up to a 5 inch gullet. Then you have how much rock is to the bar, front and back. So if you have a very flat-backed horse and you have a lot of rock to the bar, that saddle is going to hit in the middle. That horse needs to have a place to move its back up into. So I actually want to lose a little bit of contact in this center. And then the final piece When you talk about twist in an English saddle, it's in the seat. In a Western saddle, it's in the very back. So you've got to have the right twist and the right angle in the back of the saddle. When I am doing saddle fit, I'm going to move this a little bit. When I'm doing saddle fit, the first thing that I want to check for is a nice slide down through the shoulder. So I want to be able to just put my hand in as far as I can go and come straight down. For a lot of different saddle fitters that I've seen, a lot of different videos on the internet, there's one out there right now that just really bothers me. They have a little measure that goes over the wither, and then they'll say, if your horse measures here, you need a 6.5-inch gullet. If the horse measures here, you need a 7-inch gullet. They'll put the saddle on and go, see, that looks great. That is one small piece of the pie. So we put our hand in, we want to be able to slide down. Most importantly is I want to come up and have my hand at the tree bar, and I want to be able to come straight across and have nice even contact. This right in the swell area or the pommel, that is the notorious area where we get too tight and pinchy. You see a lot of horses with white spots back in there. You'll see horses hollowed out behind the shoulders. What happens if they've got no place to move that shoulder back into, then you've got a tight area, a pinchy area, and the horse can't move out. I like to give examples of many different saddle fits that I've done. The biggest one that stands in mind when I talk about that back gullet hole, I went out last year and did the Rocky Mountain National Park. They have a string of 6 horses. She said they have 12 saddles. Told me not to bring any saddles. They just wanted to know what of the 12 saddles that they already had fit their 6 horses. Well, all their saddles were very old, very outdated saddles, and none of them fit these horses. So I, of course, brought some saddles, my more universal fits, and showed them what saddle fit should feel like. Long story short, I left behind 2 saddles that fit the horse very nicely. When she came back into the shop, she said she'd been riding this horse for 9 years, and he just moved, just go. She said she put on that saddle the next day. So it was about a half hour in before that horse realized, hey, I can stretch out a little bit. I can stretch out a little bit more. By the time they were coming back, she had full strides, and that horse was doom, 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 doom. For 9 years, she'd been riding this specific horse and just thought that was the way that horse moved. They have a budget, so they can only get a couple saddles a year. She was supposed to come in on Wednesday. Unfortunately, she had some sick horses, so they didn't make it. But their budget was renewed, and she's going to come back and get some more of those horses fit. So I could go on and on with stories. I have a saddle maker. His wife has 2 big, broad, mutton-withered horses, and I have been asking him for years, your saddles are great, you just need to widen them out in this area right here. They came in, I was last year sometime, and she asked me how things were going, and I said, if I could just get him to widen out those trees a little bit. She said he cannot deny it anymore. She's got 2 horses that cannot be ridden in any of his saddles. That horse's shoulders were so pushed forward, the body worker told her that it was going to take a minimum of 3 to 4 sessions just to get those shoulders back into position so that horse could start to move again. I can't express enough how much this back gullet hole is so important to get that shoulder movement. When I'm coming in through the center of the saddle, I like to lose a little bit of contact in that center just so they have a place to move up into. And years of testing and years of just getting feedback and trying and seeing all the things that work. If that saddle is already making constant contact, when that horse is in motion, there's absolutely nowhere to move that back into. That's when you'll see a lot of stretching out of the necks, and they're trying to hollow out their back to get away from that pain that they feel in the center. So a little loss of contact. In no way do I want it to be bridging where you can reach up and, you know, wave to the other side. You've still got to have contact, but just a little bit of loss in through here. On the back side of the saddle, I want to be able to have that same slide out the back that I feel in the shoulder and in this area, and that allows them to use their motor. I have had so many people come in and their horses are losing hair. They're getting rubbed raw. One of my gals, we worked very hard to get a saddle fit for one of her horses. She went somewhere else, had a saddle fit done. She went, I think it was, it doesn't matter. I think they went out all day, really long trail ride. She came back and that horse was actually bloody right back in here. If you do not have that slide out, you've got a pinchy area. Anywhere where you cannot slide through, there is already pressure. When we're doing saddle fits, I'm putting the saddle on, no pad, it's not cinched down. So you may have, you know, a 30-pound saddle, but that is all the weight that is in the saddle. So it still will stop your hand. You will not be able to slide through. You've got to have that nice, even pressure. On the flip side, if we've got too much twist in the back, you're going to have a saddle. You're going to have a saddle that doesn't have contact. If I can get a couple fingers in the bar ends, right where these conchos are and right where these front conchos are, that's the tips and the ends of the bar. So I'll show you on this one. So basically, if we're lining them up, your concho is going to be about right here, and your concho is going to be about right here. If this is not making contact and you have it up like this, when you sit in that saddle, then your balance is going to be off. You're going to lift that saddle in the front, and now you're no longer distributing even pressure. The whole point of getting that saddle even on the horse is to distribute the rider's weight evenly along the saddle. If you have a horse that has a lot of hollow in the back, you know, they've got a little bit of sway. If you have a really flat saddle, that saddle is going to be causing pressure in the front of the bars and at the end of the bars. That's what causes that pressure to rub that back, and they get super sore in the loin area. Yeah, so that's that quick and dirty. Moving on, we can go back to the PowerPoint.
This slide or the next slide?
Next slide, yep. Oops. And you guys can still see me, right? Up in the corner?
Yep, we gotcha.
Awesome. So that's the same thing that I have here, is basically just the proper tree position of the saddle. Very, very important. Again, this is what's going to allow that shoulder to move. So when you have that finished saddle, you just want everything lined up. And you're looking for that nice even pressure. You can see on the slide right there, the little red points. That's what I'm talking about for that back gullet hole, and just the importance of that fitting. So a big misunderstanding, like my go-to saddles, I always take to saddle fits. Circle Y does a great job in their wide and their extra wide trees. My rep tells me that I need to carry some of their regular trees. I completely disagree. I've got so many older saddles with that old semi-quarter horse bar. They're just far too narrow in this back gullet hole, and they cause a lot of pressure. And it is not, we were Circle Y's #1 saddle dealer last year, and I did not order a single regular tree. So versus just going off of my horse's really wide. I need a wide saddle. If I go with Circle Y's wide or their extra wide tree, it's got a lot more rock to the bar. So if I have a lot of rock to the bar, again, it's going to be hitting in the middle. So a better question to me versus, is the saddle a full quarter horse bar? Is it a semi quarter horse bar? Let's look at your horse's conformation. Do you have a broad mutton withered horse? If so, we need a straight flat bar. I struggle with some of the flex trees. If I get a perfect fit from a flex tree from the very beginning, that flex absolutely is a wonderful thing. Let me grab my flex tree. So a flex tree is going to flex at the tips of the bars, and it's going to flex at the end of the bars. The problem is, twice last week, I went out and did saddle fits for people that were sold flex trees, and they were told, oh, yeah, the wide flex tree, that'll fit your horse. They fit anything because of the flex in the bars. I have had more horses get sore in this back end from flex trees. If they have any type of hollow in their back, these saddles have a really straight flat bar, so they cause a lot of pressure in the back. In no way, shape, or form does a flex tree automatically fit your horse. The one lady, she'd had this horse for 9 years. She bought a flex tree saddle. She tried to make it work for about 5 weeks. She came to us for a saddle fit. She spent almost $3,000 on a brand new Circle Y saddle. And after she came and did a saddle fit with us, she called us the weekend after the weekend and said she has her horse back. What a huge difference that had made. During the 5 weeks, she just kept getting more and more irritable, having more and more problems. We got her a saddle that actually fit her horse, and it completely changed that horse. One of the things that I do want to comment on this, I have a lot of people that ask me if you can pad to make a saddle fit. My rule of thumb is if there is a void, we can fill it in. So I get a lot of thoroughbred type horses, real hollowed out behind the shoulders. A lot of times I do want to put a shim in behind the shoulders. And what that does, and this is my shim pad. So what that does, if they're really hollowed out behind the shoulder, I want to fill in that hollow spot behind the shoulder. That will give the saddle enough lift in the front where we can still have a nice slide and give room at that shoulder. These diamond wool shim pads come with a full shim in the front position. I always cut this shim back so it sits in that pocket behind the shoulder. I never leave that full shim in. If you have a hollowed out horse and you leave this full shim in that front pocket, if it's going up and over that shoulder, you've just continued that lift. So you've made that hollow spot even bigger, and now you're causing even more pressure on the front. If I've got a very sway back horse, then maybe I leave that shim in the middle and I take out the front 2 shims. That'll help alleviate any pressure where the saddle does make contact. But again, I've got to have that nice slide coming through here. If it already stops my hand, putting a shim in the center is not going to get rid of that pressure point. So you've got to have that basic foundation of a good saddle fit before you can start doing any shimming. I have put shims in the back where I talk about if the saddle is too wide back in here. Sometimes you've got, people do a lot of rescue horses these days, and we've got a build up top line. And typically they'll fill in that back area and then start to fill in the top line going forward. Young horses, you're always going to get that butt that grows first, and then they'll level back out. You'll get the butt that grows. So sometimes these shim pads can come in very handy for those changes, but you've got to go in and feel that saddle and make sure that there is no pressure points to begin with, to start with.
We have a question
not
for
being
you.
interactive, so I apologize. Let's go on to that next slide. And I probably
Yes.
just talked about all those things, but that's okay.
That's okay. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yep.
Oh, good. You got a question from Alyssa asking how you felt about treeless saddles.
So
What you said when I saw this presentation has definitely changed how I think about treeless as well.
And I had somebody here just yesterday. It was called a ghost treeless saddle. They padded up the underside of the saddle, and I was reading reviews on it today because it was the second time I've heard of these ghost treeless saddles. Again, a saddle tree is meant to distribute that weight of the rider evenly. This was the second time I had felt that ghost treeless saddle, and it even said so on the reviews that some horses were getting sore and it was a little narrow right at the stirrup slot. So this is where obviously your stirrup slot is. On the trees, you can see your stirrup's going to come through here. It was very surprising to me. You would think with a treeless saddle, I'd just be able to slide right through because there's not a tree. This particular horse was a little downhill, so they built up that tree in the front. It made the pressure at the shoulder so tight. And like I say, if I build up behind the shoulder, not at the shoulder. This horse had white spots going all the way up. So it was, very speckled, and she said it was from her previous treeless saddle, which, I hate to throw out names of saddles, but that was just too narrow and causing her horse discomfort. So a tree is meant to distribute that weight evenly. If you're sitting in the center of the saddle, especially if you're going for long rides, all your weight is in that center of the back. If you are not sitting centered properly and you're even sitting a little further back like a lawn chair, you're causing lots of pressure in that lower back. To me, a treeless saddle is more of, and I apologize for saying this way, it's more of like a glorified bareback pad. So there's the conception would be that my horse is hard to fit, so a treeless saddle will work. Some of them are very, very rigid in the front of the swell, and that's to keep the saddle from rolling. So you've got to have some strength there. But if you can't slide through, that is pressure. Think about even if you had an empty backpack and it was way too small for you, and you're going to try to go out and play tennis, you're not going to be able to move freely. Even though there's not a lot of weight, it just has you pinned and trapped. So unfortunately, it's just like everything else. You've got to have that really good foundation in fitting the saddle. So I don't typically carry treeless saddles. Once in a while, I will get a Circle Y, or I have had them in, but I prefer that nice foundation on a saddle. So hopefully that answers the question. I appreciate that very much. And you can see in this slide, like at the bottom right, that pressure in the middle of the back. That's where I'm talking about if that saddle has, or that tree has too much rock to the bar, then that saddle is going to be causing pressure in the middle of the back. So not what we want at all. You can go ahead and go on to the next slide. This shows the drastic differences in horses that I'm trying to fit. And that is, all of us have very different horses, and you probably have very different horses if you have more than one out in the pasture. That first horse, that is my broad, mutton withered, very flat back horse. You go to the bottom corner on the right side, we've got hollow, we've got some big swoop for the shoulders. So that one, I need a lot more rock to the bar. That's where that extra wide comes in, which is very misconceiving. Like I say, it's not for this stronger mutton withered flatter back. It's more for that bigger swoop at the shoulders, trying to fit that. We have every different style of horse that you can imagine these days. There's some saddle fitters out there that send people in and say, so and so did a saddle fit for me, and they say, I need a full quarter horse bar. Pretty much every saddle that I have new in my shop is going to be full quarter horse. Of course, I have some gaited, some draft, some halflinger trees, but they're all wider trees. That small piece of the puzzle, again, going back to one tiny measurement, and that's from here to here. If this is 6.5, they consider that a semi-quarter horse bar. If it's 6 3/4, they consider that a quarter horse bar. If it's 7, then it's considered a full quarter horse bar, pretty much up to about an 8-inch, and then you start getting into the draft bars. But that doesn't make the big difference. A much bigger difference is what angle. Do I have using my hands, I have a 6.5-inch gullet that has a flare like this, or do I have a 7-inch gullet and it has a flare like this? So that bar pattern is going to make all the difference, not the gullet width. I hope that makes sense as well. We can go on to the next slide.
Yeah, it's helpful when you use gestures, actually. For me anyway.
Say that again.
It's helpful when you use like the arm gestures.
Oh, good.
For me anyway.
I'm very.
Oh, yeah, no one else is allowed to talk or show their video right now. So they can all comment. I will remind everybody you can comment in the chat if you have anything you want to say or add or questions. Or you can raise your hand and I can unmute you or something like that. So as you were.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So as I was saying, the majority of saddle trees were made for the general quarter horse body type. I hear very often that, well, back in the day, growing up, we just threw a saddle on and you went and rode. And there's a lot of things that we didn't know then that we know now. But we also had a very standard quarter horse. They had a job, and now our horses have changed a little bit. So they're more for pleasure. We do still, of course, have those working horses, but that's why we've changed that conformation. We have selectively bred to build bigger, faster, nicer conformations, more performance looks, and it has drastically changed the bodies. One of my trainers that I have worked with for at least over 15 years, I tell her she could do saddle fit in her sleep. She's like, nope, I'm the trainer. You're the saddle fitter. I will always come to you. She, changes out her lesson horses, usually, every year to 2 years at the most. When she first gets those new horses in, a lot of times they have to build up their top line. They have to get, remuscled up. So we will do saddle fit in the very beginning. She will watch for any changes in demeanor. And a lot of times in 2 to 4 months, she is back and it's time to change that saddle. She's now working this horse, many times a day, putting a lot of rides on and just muscling up. So one of the things that we offer to try to help with that, and I get asked this question all the time, well, what do I do if my horse changes? And horses do change. I get a lot of young horses and, they will change. Like I was saying, that rump grows, then they level out. Then that wither will start to develop and things definitely will change in your saddle. There's not many times where you have that lifetime saddle and it just works forever. But one of the things that we offer anytime you get a saddle from us, if your needs change for any reason, I offer a 70% trade back of what you paid for that saddle towards an upgraded, newer used that we own. That way you can makes it a little bit more economical, a little bit more affordable to make sure that your horse's comfort is top priority and that you're fitting that horse like it needs to be. So that is a huge thing. My dad started this as a retirement hobby 27 years ago. And when I told him I was going to do that, he's like, you can't do that. I said, I promise you it'll be okay. And you know, it makes it workable. So I have people that have come back so many times and traded up because that horse doesn't stay constant. Um, Things change, and I want to make it workable so you keep that horse's comfort top of the line. Obviously, rider is equally important, but we've got to have all those things come together. So, all right, you can go to the next slide. So I already talked about most of this. Sorry, I just keep on talking, but that's exactly why there's simply no standard quarter horse and no standard quarter horse tree anymore. They are very different. And you know, I'll talk about that for a minute too, which is very, very kind of unfortunate. It's good for me because it gives me more variety when I'm trying to fit a saddle. But you talk about, you know, like I said, we were Circle Y's biggest dealer last year. I can go to, I want to say I probably have a variety of about 10 different Circle Y trail saddles because each one of those trail saddles has a different bar pattern. So I know if I have a flatter, straighter back, I want to try the Sulphur River. If I've got a little bit more hollow and a little bit more sway to the back, then I'm going to go to one of the high horse saddles. I'm always trying to get that wider variety. So it's very, you know, during COVID and all the saddle shortages, it was really hard to keep saddles in stock. And people would say, well, I just need a wide tree for this horse. So getting away from the quarter horse, the full quarter horse, and none of them are built the same. So even if you get somewhat of a standard in the trail saddles, well, now you want to change it and you want to go to the barrel saddles. Barrel saddles are going to fit way different than the trail saddles. They're going to fit way different than my all-arounds, my roping saddles. You know, if you have a pretty flat back, mutton withered horse, a wade saddle, which I don't know if you guys can see that here, a wade saddle has no swell. It's more of an A-fork shape. Just the foundation of a wade saddle has a lot more rock to the bar. The wade saddles are going to sit you a lot deeper in the seat. I've got a lot of trainers that really love their wade saddles for going out and doing trails and just their everyday working saddle. It's going to give you a little bit more, hopefully you guys can see me. It's going to give you a little bit more of a narrower twist in the seat. Because there's no swell, they can take that ground seat and make it a lot thinner so it doesn't sit you as wide. But with that more rock to the bar, that saddle's going to hit in the center, and then your horse doesn't have that freedom of movement of the back. So it's very frustrating for me as well. If there's one thing, and I say this jokingly and not jokingly, but if there's one thing that makes me want to quit my day job, it's sometimes saddle fitting. I wish so strongly that I could get these makers to change their saddle trees and just widen them out. The problem is, you know, saddle fit is definitely getting more and more well known. Saddle fit is evolving. I'm so glad that people are coming in for saddle fits, but these makers, you know, there's no lull in their sales, so they keep on making saddles. Some of the highest end brands And I hate to say that, but some of the highest end brands are some of the worst fitting saddles. And I just do not understand how it has not caught up with them, how they do not change out their trees and get these trees wider. So, don't go off of the misconception that I just need a full quarter horse bar and, that'll fit my horse. It's that whole piece of the pie that comes in. Um, I have a wonderful customer and I love her to death. She was in last year sometime. The saddle that we had originally fit, she didn't think was working for her horse anymore. I can't remember what we found out was actually the problem. It wasn't the saddle fit, but we did change the saddle and give just a tiny bit more room in that shoulder. It was a $1,300 saddle that fit her horse. When she came in, she's like, well, Dan, I got my husband, he transferred $5,000. I can get any saddle. And she wanted, a cream of the crop, top of the line. If a McCall saddle doesn't fit your horse, a McCall saddle doesn't fit your horse. And that's where I say it's always a struggle, fit the horse, fit the rider, fit the budget. But horse has to come first. We will know if that saddle is comfortable to us or not. But the horse, some people definitely are in tune and know how to listen to those horses, but a lot of beginners just don't know. I have an employee right now that is struggling so hard to, find that balance between horse and rider. And I just can't express it enough that the horse has to come first. It's got to be that foundation. It's got to fit the horse. And then we will do our best to fit you. Let's see. Where am I? So I go off on my little tangent. No standard full court. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I can completely pull you off on a tangent. We have several questions. I think you
Awesome.
talked about it at the end. Sadie would like you to walk through if or how people can schedule a saddle fit with your shop and how long it takes, etc. And a general price of what that fitting session would be. But I think you will end up talking about that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't matter. We've got a good amount of time, so I can certainly bring it up. I travel offsite and then we do them on site. So on site is $35 for the first horse, $15 for any additional horses. I like to schedule a minimum of an hour. Like I say, if anyone's been here with me, I have sometimes been out there for 3 or 4 hours trying to fit that horse. There's no fudging. We talked about at one point, should we offer, A is the best fit, B is a close second. If you have any place where you're not getting that comfort for the horse, it doesn't matter. Like you can't soar up in the loin, you can't soar up in the center. You don't want to not give those shoulders movement. So a minimum of an hour. I schedule an hour and a half in between appointments just to make sure that there's enough time. Typically, there's 3 of us that do saddle fits. I am the only one that travels. If we go offsite, you can go to our website and it does talk about if it's within 30 miles, it's 125 plus $1.50 a mile one way, and then it tiers from there. If I'm going to come off site for a saddle fit, I'm going to take a minimum of 6 to 8 saddles. If I have 10 to 12, I will bring 10 to 12. So one of my struggles, and you learn as time goes on, I'll get people that want to do, 4 horses at one barn, and then I, give a discount and a break. The problem is it'll take away from that particular rider. If you're a 16-inch seat and you want to trail ride and the other person is a 14-inch seat and they want to barrel race, there's only so many saddles I can fit in my van. So I don't want to take away from someone. When you come here, obviously I've got all the saddles at our disposal. So it's always nicer if you can come here, but I travel as well.
Okay. And then if you want, you can keep going on your presentation for sure, and talk about this stuff. But we have two different questions, so it's up to you. Do you
Okay.
want to keep going and I'll
Yeah,
ask them?
let's ask some questions. I like that.
All right. So, Sadie had another question. Are there any general differences in saddle fit specifically for mountain or trail riding, or is a saddle fit standard as long as it fits the horse?
Saddle fit is standard as long as it fits the horse, for sure. You know, like I say, you can't fudge those different areas. So as long as you have that nice, constant, even flow, your horse is going to do great. There is certain things. I had a customer that her saddle kept sliding back, her saddle kept sliding back. It was a crossfire rigging, so it's a gated saddle, and it was actually a circle Y gated flex, but that rigging was angled, and my repair guy put a regular rear cinch on, and I don't know if you guys know what a crossfire rigging is. That's when they're from the front to the back and you just do one cinch instead of having a front and a rear cinch. So we changed out and gave her a standard rear cinch, and it completely fixed the problem. So if you know, and that's another thing. If your saddle works, I will absolutely tell you that your saddle works. So we do not in any way, shape, or form try to upsell. If anything, I downsell all the time because that's what fits the horse. So hopefully that helps. You know, it's got to fit all the way through. And as long as you have that freedom of movement, you are absolutely golden. I could go on and on with stories. I had a gentleman, and these are the things that, as hard as it is, that keeps me going. He brought in a couple saddles for consignment, and he said he had been in about 3 years ago, and they brought their granddaughter in. She was barrel racing, and he told me, I changed a little girl and a horse's life. They were getting ready to get rid of the horse because she was having so much problems. And after we did a saddle fit, they are, you know, getting along perfectly. I had a saddle fit a couple weeks ago, and last weekend, the trainer had told this gal that her saddle fit fine for a year, and she had listened to her, and she knew something wasn't right. So they came and they did a saddle fit. We found a saddle that actually fit two of the horses beautifully. The second one slightly off, but compared to what they were using, it was great. Anyways, when I dropped off that rear cinch, I was already out doing saddle fit, so I just ran it by her. She said the biggest thing for them is their horse walks again. And I'm like, what do you mean your horse walks again? She said at the barn, if her daughter wanted to just tootle around the barn, the horse would not walk. Absolutely refused to walk. She could get on bareback. She could go all over. The horse was fine. He would still run barrels for her somehow, some way. But she said after putting the saddle on, and mom got very teary-eyed and said the horse walks. So that horse could not move its shoulders and would not walk. So, again, going off on a little bit of a tangent, but it doesn't matter the discipline or what you're doing, is as long as you've got that foundation.
So, Megan, you can unmute yourself again if you'd like. Megan asked a question about fitting for mules, and maybe she can just kind of clarify or ask a little bit more detail in that question.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Megan.
I have to figure out all this newfangled technology.
Yeah,
What? Hi. Yes, I wanted to hear a little bit more in depth about saddle fitting for mules. If you have saddles for mules that include the riggings for breechings, cruppers, etc.
It's definitely a struggle. I do have mule saddles. Do I feel that they fit today's mules? I wish there were more options out there. When I'm fitting mules, it's a lot of that same thing that I'm talking about, a straight flat bar. Typically, your mules are going to have a flatter, more round back. So that's where that fit comes into play. But unfortunately for me, that's where my saddle makers give me a bit of a struggle to fit. So it may not be a mule saddle that works. I have again changed some riggings on some mule saddles, and it's made a difference. But you've got to have that good foundation. So it's just, rarely does what they call a gated saddle fit a gated horse. Sometimes it does. Sometimes my halflinger trees will fit a halflinger. Sometimes the mule saddles will fit a mule, but the mule saddles that I typically get in, Billy Cook and HR make some of the mule saddles that I carry. I think that McCall makes a mule saddle, but oh man, do I struggle because they're still on an 18-month time frame to get saddles in from them. But it's that it doesn't matter what I'm fitting, it's that whole foundation that's got to work. So if you're fitting a mule, you definitely want to feel right in here, and that slide out the back. I mean, all of those pieces, because if that saddle has too much rock or it's too narrow in that back area, it's going to be restricting. So it really doesn't matter to me what breed or what what type of horse. We've got to match the three-dimensional underside of the saddle with the three-dimensional top side of either the horse or the mule. So I've got some good wider, flatter bars. I hate to be so biased, but Circle Y owns their own tree company, and they are, to me, the leader in saddle fit. They have the widest variety of trees out there. I get a lot more fit in my trail saddles than I do in my ranch saddles. And I apologize, any gentlemen out there. The cowboys, these good old cowboys, are so hard to change their ways. And, my saddle makers, and it's very unfortunate, most of my saddle makers are not saddle fitters, and they just, they get their trees and they're not out there fitting horses like I am. So I say I'm going to change the world, and I really, really try. I have taken some saddles and completely destroyed the saddle to get numbers off of those tree bars so I can have them duplicated by other makers to try to get a wider variety. But it's a tough world. So sorry to go off on the simple question of, do I have mule saddles? I do, but as long as we've got that proper foundation matching the three-dimensional underside to the three-dimensional top side, doesn't matter if it's stated mule or not. We can definitely add any, crupper rings in the back. We can certainly get it adapted for that mule. I have a wonderful repair guy. He was with Brighton Feed and Saddlery before he came with me, and he's been with me now for, I think Brighton's been closed almost 10 years. So, so those are things that we can definitely adjust and fix when it's needed, but we got to start with that foundation.
And Danna, since you're on the topic of kind of variation in saddles, another user, I think it was Alyssa, I should look again, asked what you recommend for Arabians. I think I probably asked you the same question because my horse basically doesn't have a back. I mean, I know there's ribs and bones in there, but he's so short backed.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of like the overarching question for what do you recommend for an Arabian is for a short backed horse.
Well, and that's a struggle. I do the 18th or the 19th rib, sorry, is more of an English thing. Your English tree is going to be a lot less bar to it. So they don't want it to go past that last rib. But in a Western saddle, you're distributing that weight evenly. And so you've got more bar to it. I think the smallest bar that we can get is about a 24 or a 26-inch length. We can definitely get shorter skirts, but if you still have that nice slide out the back, and that's where the trick is, you're not causing any pressure point. A lot of Arabians are a little bit narrower all the way through. So a lot of times I need a straighter, flatter bar, but I need less of an angle. So we were on a slide, I think it was the last slide that we were at, and it talks about, if your horse is like this or if they're more like this. So I would need a straighter, flatter bar, but not as wide. And when it comes to that rump, you're not going to be needing this really wide twist. Keep going, a couple more, and one more, I think. Yep, right there. So it would be more like that first one, an upright or steep profile, but we're going to have that going all the way through the back. So Arabs can be just like any other horse. Do you have really straight and flat, or have we started to hollow out a little bit? What age? So it's very hard to fit on breed, but we're going to fit on underside of that saddle. Do we need a straighter, flatter bar, a little bit more narrow? Some of the flex trees could work good for the Arabs because they're straighter and flatter and a little bit more narrow. But then I've got, one of my HR flex trails, that's my go-to for halflingers and gypsy crosses. So it's a flex trail, but it's a wide flat bar. And I've asked my maker, could you please duplicate this in a solid tree? Like, I need this saddle so bad, and some roping and some ranch saddles. And he said, by the time it can't take it apart, because that flex tree, once you start to take it apart, you've got no foundation left because it just flexes. So you would actually need, and we've talked about buying a 3D printer and starting to scan and see if we could get some progress in tree making that way. So
that would be very cool.
It's kind of the same thing that asking if I have a saddle for the mule. It doesn't matter. I've got to match 3-dimensional to 3-dimensional as best as possible.
Sadie is asking, and you did cover this already, if you could just briefly review that you will consider padding where there are voids, or when there's voids. Does that mean padding can perhaps be tried when there is not enough rock in a saddle, as opposed to dumping the saddle right off the bat?
It can, yep. So if there's not enough rock, typically what you're going to have is more of a bridging in the center of the saddle, and that would be when you would use something like this diamond wool pad, and we would take out the front shim and the back shim, and you're filling in the center. Diamond wool comes with this 1/2-inch shim. I have found over the years that this 1/2-inch shim is just too much. So we actually buy rolls of 1/4-inch felt, and we cut it and we make 1/4-inch shims. It's a pretty steep fill when you're doing this 1/2-inch, and I've actually gone all the way down. I have some super thin 1/8-inch shims, and I have seen a tremendous, like, there was one horse that everything we tried was just a little wide in the very back. So I put a 1/4-inch shim just in the very back. So that way I wasn't losing contact here. The saddle wasn't dipping down, and it was keeping everything sitting level. I tried a 1/4-inch shim, could not slide out the back. I dropped that down to an 1/8-inch shim, and it was perfect. So yes, definitely, as long as if you're running your hand underneath and you don't already have pressure here and here, then you can certainly shim in the middle. That is absolutely doable. On the flip side of that, I had a gentleman that bought a very nice horse. He wanted to use his Wade saddle. It was hitting in the center. So we took out this center shim, and I left a shim in the front and I left a shim in the back, and that had a place to put that rock, and his horse did fabulous. I want to say he came back probably about 9 months later and bought a second pad. It worked wonderful for the horse. And he called the gentleman. What happened was he called the gentleman that he got the horse from, and he said, "This isn't the horse you told me I was getting." And the guy said, "Yes, it is. There's something about your saddle that isn't fitting this horse. You need to go to a saddle fitter." And I mean, this was years ago. So I was actually doing a free day at the Boulder County Horse Rescue. I know that's not the name of it, but I was doing saddle fits there for they had an open house, and I was checking saddles. He heard about it. He brought his horse over. He came to the shop. He got this pad, and it worked. So there is definitely some adjustments that can be made. But just giving that little bit of a 1/2 inch lift so that saddle had a place to put that rock down in that pocket, it worked perfectly. So my rule of thumb is, as long as there's no pressure points, then we can absolutely do some shimming and do some adjusting. I've had really good luck with impact gel pads. An impact gel pad just kind of, with a lack of a better way to say it, it kind of smooths out any rough edges. My manager, she has her pro card in barrel racing every year. Her horses, she likes to keep a fat, happy pony in the winter. And of course, she isn't running as much and not near as frequently. And so her horses will get nice and chubby. And then she starts running in the spring, and that muscle starts to build up. And just this weird combination, she would know the moment her horse started to dodge second barrel that the saddle was getting tight in that one shoulder. And that was his more prominent shoulder. So we were always doing adjustments. She was always having me check it. Researched a little bit. She went with an impact gel pad, and for 2 years now, she has not had that problem. So there is some things that padding can definitely do. It doesn't fix all situations, but it definitely can make a big difference. All right. So one of the things that I feel, so years ago, there's a saddle shop in Fort Collins. It's English, Happy Horse. Happy Horse. I followed one of my employees that rode both English and Western. She was doing a saddle fit with Jen, the owner there. And I tagged along to see how English saddle fit was done versus Western saddle fit. I went, yep, you can definitely keep the English saddle fitting. It was just this light bulb came on to me at that time that you have got to know all the brands of those saddles and how they fit. That is where our expertise comes in. Sometimes I can look at a horse and say, let's go get this saddle, and it is the fit right off of the bat. It's knowing how those undersides of the saddles fit, and that is one of the trickiest parts of my job, is ordering and making sure I have a variety of seat sizes, a variety of disciplines in all those different trees and how they fit. And I make all these motions because, again, does that saddle have a straight flat bar? Does it have more flare for the shoulder? Does it widen out a lot in the back? So saddle fitting for me is definitely knowing how my different makers' saddles fit the different horses and getting in that nice variety. When you get into the, some of the lower price point saddles, the struggle is that they get inexpensive trees, and those trees are not finessed. I'm so excited. One of our makers that we lost during COVID, the gentleman passed away, did not pass away from COVID, but he had passed away. We tried to work with his son. It just, we're waiting on saddles for 2 years. He's not giving us answers. But the other day I was researching a saddle and I went, oh my gosh, this is, so-and-so saddle. So We gave a call, found out that these guys were not the owners. They were salesmen for this guy. So very sophisticated, nice higher end saddles. That gives me the option to have, and I point behind me because this is where my ranch section is. It gives me more options for those ranch horses because again, a lot of the ranch saddles are made by these steadfast cowboys that just haven't changed their trees. So saddle fit to me is knowing those different variety of trees and how they fit the horses. All right, next slide. Well, and we've covered a lot of this. Can I shim or use a special pad? And that picture in the middle, that lump in that hollow, that's when I talk about shimming right behind the shoulder. I don't want to go up and over that shoulder if I'm going to shim, because if I go up and over that shoulder, I've just accentuated that problem. And now we've got more of a hollow, more pressure sitting right on the shoulder. So those are definitely times that we need to shim. I do not want to or will not shim to make a saddle fit, but sometimes you just have no other option. I do the best I can with the variety of saddles that we have. And I talk to my makers all the time and getting them to change out the trees. You know, I'm really sad. I don't know if you guys know much about Billy Cook saddles. The manager has been with them for 25 years. He had just sent me a couple prototypes this year of widening out those saddles in that back gullet hole, and was definitely on that right path. And very sad, say a prayer for them that they're doing better. But when all those tornadoes hit Sulphur, Oklahoma, they got completely wiped out. They lost their offices, they lost their warehouse, they lost their showroom. Going all the way back to 1939, they lost everything. So super sad to see that all gone. And you know, it was one of the makers that we were making progress in getting them to change out those trees. So yeah. All right, next slide. All right, so some of the signs of improper saddle fit. Definitely when you have white spots, you know, I'm going to back up for just a second. A lot of people will go off of sweat patterns. And when you are getting a saddle that fits, if you've got a wider dry spot in here, a lot of times that's because we've gotten room now back in that shoulder. When a horse's shoulder moves, it's hard for me to do, but it kind of comes back and out. And so it's not just a frontwards, backwards motion. It's more of a out and through, out and through. So giving room in that shoulder to have all that movement, there isn't as constant pressure. So larger dry spots, I don't mind. If you have a small dry spot, then that is where you have a big pressure point. And what actually happens is that eliminates that sweat gland from the horse. So it damages that sweat gland, and they can't sweat in that area because it's got it pinched off. When you get white spots, it's actually damaged the pigment gland, and that pigment gland does not come back. And so that's what causes those white hairs. And a lot of times when we're going into the winter months, I get a lot more calls. My horse is getting white spots. Well, if it's a new horse that they just got this year, sometimes those white spots start to come in as they're getting their winter coat because that hair fills in more and that pigment gland is damaged. I have one of my customers, you know, I can see her name and she'll know I'm talking about her. But we were talking a little bit today and trying to fit her horse, and it was definitely a tricky fit. We worked for a long time, found a good fitting saddle, and she's got some dry spots. So one of the things that I asked her to do is to feel that dry spot. And if it's hot, that is not a good sign. So if you have a dry spot, when you take everything off, feel that dry spot. If it's hot, that means it's causing a lot of friction, and that's when it's damaging that sweat gland. But if it feels nice and cool, that's where you've got that more freedom of movement in that shoulder or wherever. And so that's where you get a little bit more dry area and not sweaty. Um, the the sweat pattern, I think that movement, especially losing a little bit of contact in the center when you're in the winter months and it's harder to get them sweated up, it's hard to know exactly if that is a constant sign. So sweat patterns are, something to definitely pay attention to, but just keep in mind the smaller the dry spot, the more sign that that would be a sign of improper saddle fit. Um, the irritable horse. So, your horse you're going to saddle up and that horse is wanting to reach around to bite you. They're trying to tell you something. When I go out to do a saddle fit and I throw that saddle on and that horse is stepping away from me, they're trying to tell me that they've had a saddle that hasn't fit well in the past. I had somebody tell me the other day it wasn't a saddle that we provided. They were trying some different saddles at a performance that they were at. And she's like, I think the saddle fits great. The horse's head was high. And I'm like, no, we don't want that horse's head high. If that horse's head is high, like I was saying before, they're trying to hollow out their back because there's something causing pressure there. So, you want your horse to stay nice and level-headed. There's the horse that I talked about that, just go, 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 go. And then first ride with a saddle that fit after 9 years, within a half hour, realized that it could actually move and stretch out. The horse that wouldn't walk around the barn. I mean, there's so many factors. You've got to listen to the horse. It's going to give you the best indication. If you're not sure, you can certainly feel along the back and see if there's any areas where that horse is sore. If you are doing body work on a regular basis for your horse, get your saddle fit checked. I have an employee and she's been a customer for, oh goodness, forever. And we fit her big draft horse, Bubba. And Bubba later went down the road. I can't remember for what the reason, but she had a smaller horse. So she thought, well, certainly if Bubba's saddle fit Bubba, it's going to fit this horse. She was getting body work and she was spending a lot. And I want to say she did that for a year. And then she came to work for me. And I'm like, why didn't you circle back around and have me check the saddle? That saddle did not fit her new horse. And I don't know. I didn't ask how much she spent in body work, but she probably could have, at least put down a nice chunk of change, if not bought a saddle or two in the amount of money. And I'm not saying that body work isn't necessary, that body work isn't a good thing, but keep in mind that if your saddle is fitting properly, your horse should not be getting sore. They should have all that movement and that freedom of movement that they need. So, swishing of the tail can be another thing. Like I had a gentleman years ago that his wife ran a barrel production. He wanted to start riding. He came and did a saddle fit and didn't want to spend the money that it was going to take on a saddle. He got a saddle off of Craigslist. I think it was that long ago. And they were out one time doing the barrel races, and during intermission he saddled up his horse and he was riding around in the arena and that horse blew up and he got taken away in an ambulance. It was not good. And if he would have listened to that horse and paid to have that saddle fit in the very beginning, those things wouldn't have happened. So when you don't listen, there's always a final result. Sometimes horses can be the most stoic creatures and you could ever imagine, and they will tolerate so much. I mean, 9 years of riding that horse with just moving versus one ride in a fitting saddle and I can move out. So listen to your horse. You know, I just can't express that enough. I had a lady in here, and I've got a million stories. I had a lady in here one day and we started explaining saddle fit to her, and she started crying and she told her husband, I sold the wrong horse. She was using her dad's saddle from way back when they lived up in the mountains, and that horse was, you know, giving her fits. It wasn't the horse, it was the saddle. So just know that it can make a huge difference. And there is a ton of people out there that ride with the saddles that don't fit, and some horses will tolerate it, some won't. Some you don't know how long they'll tolerate it until it's enough, but they work hard and they want to take care of us. So so pay attention, listen to them. Communication is key. You know, I told the story of the lady that was just in here a week ago, got sold that Flex Trail saddle, told it will fit anything, you know, spent a lot of money on it, and it completely changed her horse of 9 years. And so happy that her horse is back, just by getting a proper saddle fit. So more
It's like this is-
questions?
Yeah, it's like this is important to you or something. I will let everybody know you guys all have the ability to share video, share yourself, like show your own video if you want to, show yourself, or unmute yourself and ask questions. Becky, I saw that you were kind of coming on and off mute, so I wasn't sure if you were trying to ask a question or not. So now's a great time if anybody wants to ask questions. I always give everybody a lot longer wait time and pause. It seems like an eternity when
Technology.
it's on the internet,
Yes,
but I like to wait a little bit
absolutely.
longer to make sure that no one's like struggling to unmute themselves or unsure if they have a question or not. I know for a fact there's at least 4 people in here that would absolutely head up to your place tomorrow. So you could talk about scheduling for sure.
Nice.
And how that works. Like I know everyone is probably super excited for to actually come up there and see those saddles. So
Awesome.
I'll shut up
Well,
first.
we do not this weekend. Actually, I think it's a week from now, June 7th, 8th, and 9th, we have our annual customer appreciation sale. So we will not be doing saddle fits that Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but we are going to have store-wide sales. I should take the computer and walk into my manager's office and show all the giveaways that our vendors have sent us, like tons and tons and tons of giveaways. I think right now we have about 40. It includes a couple food trucks, coffee truck. Yep, there it is, and vendor fair. So we being at our new location, I started to add vendors when we first moved here. And last year we got rained out. So I did a separate vendor fair to make up for all those vendors that came and tried to set up, and it poured rain all day long. So we did a separate vendor fair in September. Huge hit. And this year we're combining them all. So the vendor fair will only be Saturday. But saddles will be on sale. Great time to get new pads, bits, and just come check out the store. Scheduling, you can call the store and we can get you scheduled anytime that you would like. My manager, she does saddle fits. Bill that I talked about from Brighton Feed and Saddlery, he is a saddle maker. He's our repair guy. He does saddle fits, and then me as well. I don't work every Sunday. I had to bribe one of my employees to work Sundays for me, so I can at least try to have a day off during the week. but we're in show season and her kids are doing horse things. So guess what? She needs a few Sundays off. So I am working them here and there, but give a call to the store, shoot us an email. I know Hillary, I owe you, I'm going to possibly come down to, is it Woodland Park? Is that right?
Oh gosh, we're down in Penrose, all of us.
Penrose. Okay. So we'll have
We
to,
have other members in Colorado Springs that are interested too.
nice. And it's, my struggle, like I thought about going and making it a trip. So I would need a place to store the saddles because I don't want to leave them in my van overnight. But we'll talk about that for sure. And I would love to do that.
We had there was a question. I think we're coming to the end here. So I definitely want to make sure that everyone that's in here gets access to that coupon code that we told them about. And someone was asking if they'd be able to use that coupon at the customer appreciation sale.
No, I'm afraid we will have everything, but I can't stack it. So
that's why we ask.
You can use it online at any time, and then anything over 100 we ship for free. So we would do that coupon code plus the ship for free, but I will have some really good sales. So save the coupon for when you need something again, and then we can use it. But yeah, it'd be hard for me to stack them with that.
Okay, now again is a great time for anybody to ask questions, unmute themselves, or otherwise figure things out. This email is the best way for people to get a hold of you if they want to do a fitting ?
Yep. And then we also have info@Saddle Up. That's the store email, because I do offsite saddle fits. Sometimes I'm a little harder to get a hold of. So you could do info@Saddle Up, Colorado, and then that goes to my manager and they can get you scheduled and stuff as well. But always feel free to reach out to me directly. I just sometimes am not as quick to respond as they are. Let me go get the little flyer real quick, and then because I don't know what that code is right off the bat.
Okay. And there's also a question about whether or not you fit Aussie saddles.
So it's the same concept of a Western saddle. They do position just a little bit different. I can give you that same, generalized, I shouldn't say generalized. I can give you that same, any pressure points that I'm feeling, if it's nice, even contact. I know with Australian saddles, they're a lot like English saddles. So you can reflock and refleece if you find someone to do that. So that's where I struggle. That is not my forte. So if you were looking to fit an Australian saddle and possibly wanted to have it reflocked to fit, then I would not be the answer for that. It may be worth checking with Jen at Happy Horse if she has resources for reflocking, because she's the specialist in the English saddles. But I can give a general guide, and I will do the same thing on an English saddle, just feel that general for any pressure points and so forth. But I am, they flock very differently, and you can make changes in an English saddle. So it's not my specialty by any means.
And I can type that coupon code into the chat.
Nice. Okay, perfect.
I don't
go anywhere.
I was gonna say, I don't remember what it is though.
Oh, okay. Let me go grab it. I'll be right back. Sorry.
Now's a good time to type in your questions or unmute yourself and ask questions. I am still here as well. Sitting outside up in Denver. It's very, very pleasant night. It's not windy and it's not raining and it's not hailing, which is
I went in the wrong direction.
That's great. That's how I look when I'm trying to find something in my house. Or I walk and then stop and back up and I can't decide in my head, is it the direction that I was walking or is it this way? And I have to pause and think for a minute.
My apologies. I had a bunch of them in my office and then I recycled them to send them back out. So Saddle Up 15.
All caps, or does it matter?
They're all caps, so we should probably keep it that way.
Website on there. And then Juna just asked, are you usually busy with saddle fits, or is it easy to get an appointment?
It's usually pretty easy to get an appointment. We do fill up. Like I think last Saturday we had 4 horses. On Sunday I only had 1 because I worked this last weekend. So it just depends. You know, today we only had 1 saddle fit with 3 of us here on Wednesdays and Thursdays. That is often my day to go more offsite. I try to do Wednesdays and Thursdays. I will do them all the time, but we usually can get you in pretty quickly.
And what's the best way for them to do that? Email to schedule, email or phone call?
Phone call. Yeah. We get quite a bit of information from you. You know, when you do call, and we send over a calendar invite. So it's nice to chat. If we're going offsite, we do have you send us pictures of your horse. You know, we get seat size and rider's height and weight and discipline, and you know, a lot of questions that we ask there. But a phone call's is easier because we can interact and ask all those questions, and you can ask any questions, sometimes going back and forth with email. But my manager, she checks Facebook messages all the time. So I know I wouldn't even begin to know how to check like an Instagram message. She does TikTok, she does it all. So you can reach out any way that you're most comfortable with. But if you don't mind a phone call, then that's fabulous.
Great. Vicky wants to know, how do we use the coupon code?
So the coupon code is for online sales. So you can go to our website. Like I said, we ship for free. If you want to call in and do a phone order or stop by the store, I will absolutely honor it. Just let us know that you got it through the Rocky Mountain Backcountry Horseman presentation that I did, and we will absolutely honor that.
I'm always looking at endurance saddles. That's all I ever look for.
So one of the things too on the saddle fit tab on our website, if you go to that saddle fit tab, there's a couple different videos. There's our gentleman Bill, and if you scroll down a little bit more, oh, that one video is not there. This
and
one,
I'm not sure if that's me or you.
No worries. The one right below that, it's for a cutout tutorial. So we do have a lot of people, if trailering is hard and, you know, budget conscious, which we completely understand. He goes through doing full back tracings of your horse. Basically, you use a Romex wire or a wire hanger, transfer those onto cardboard, just do a hand down all the way through the horse's back. We then take saddles, we flip them upside down, and we put your tracings in all those different areas. And it's matching up those 3 dimensions. So getting those angles right, we can get a pretty good fit. We do it out of state all the time. I've done it out of the country before, had a really good fit. So that is always an option as well. If it's hard to trailer or hard to have me come out, we can start with that and send you with a couple saddles. We do trials. So we'll let you take 2 to 3 saddles out. Typically, I like to have them back in 2 to 3 days, but we work around that all the time. And then at the very bottom, I do need to redo that video, but 2 of my girls, one's now my manager, they go through doing saddle fit on their horses. So if you wanted to test your saddle, it's a great thing. You can pull up on your phone, you can do it, you know, set your saddle on. They will walk you through step by step. They do 2 different horses and show you exactly what we're feeling for. So, you know, it's hard when you've not done it. When you do it for a living, it seems like the easiest thing. What I tell people is you may not know if it's perfect, but you'll definitely know if there's some tight, pinchy areas.
Well, I think I don't want us to get cut off. I think we have more than 1 minute left in this meeting, but just for the sake of brevity, we have been talking for an hour and a half. So For any of you that have any last minute questions now, I didn't realize, I was wondering if my hair was really doing that or if it was a weird blurred background thing. It's my bangs like all flipped up really weird.
You're totally good.
Um,
Well, it's good that I could talk that much. I'm like, oh, it's going to be hard on Zoom. I'm so used to being interactive, but I appreciate y'all listening to my rambling and hope it was worthwhile for sure.
Yeah, Juna, if you want to unmute yourself and ask that question. Oh, she typed it just as I was saying that. If your saddle fits without a pad, how does adding or choosing a pad change the fit of the saddle?
So it really shouldn't change as long as you have a standard saddle pad, meaning that there's no fill, there's no shims, there's no specialty components to it. So it starts with the saddle directly and then throwing the pad on. We have been definitely checking more and more, throwing that saddle pad on and seeing if it changes anything. But for the most part, it should be very consistent. And you can do the same thing. So you can feel along those tree bars, and then you can put your saddle pad on and feel along those tree bars underneath the saddle pad. And that's how I check when I shim. If I run into any tight spots that shim's too thick, nope, we don't need a shim there. I had somebody with I think it was an impact gel, a much older impact gel the other day. And when I felt it, you just lost that nice slide. And then we put a regular pad underneath and it felt really good. So I think that gel had just deteriorated. The pad was, my guess, probably over 10 years old. So, but it should absolutely stay the same.
And you could, if we had a group of horses come up from Penrose, for example, or from Colorado Springs, you could schedule them kind of one after the other, right?
Absolutely. And I've done group things before where a whole club came and we scheduled it earlier on a Sunday because I don't open till noon. So, I've got a great area off to the side. I can fit several trailers all at once. I want to say that day there was probably 6, maybe 8 trailers that trailered over. And, we just went down the line and some people came to audit and just watch, but many were involved. So I can always look at doing something like that for the club as well. And, doing a bulk club rate versus an individual rate, something like that.
Yeah, I'm certain we would have multiple clubs down in
Okay.
our area in Colorado Springs. We really I'm sure everyone that is still in here listening, you guys are all welcome to just take off whenever. Don't feel like you have to wait for me to say bye. But I think we are very severely lacking anyone with any real saddle fit skills in our area. We have people who know a lot because they've just kind of had to figure it out, not necessarily because they learned anything specific, just because they kind of have a lot of long-term experience putting saddles on horses.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would bet that you get a lot of phone calls tomorrow and in the next week from us down here. So we
Nice.
just like,
Well,
I don't know, there's a lot to think about. And I think you mentioned as well the flex tree. You definitely got me thinking differently about a flex tree, especially on a short backed horse. So I thank you very much for coming and talking
awesome.
to everybody. And everyone else who's here definitely feels the same way. Now's your last chance for questions, everybody.
Awesome. I thank you guys so much for having me. It is definitely something that I'm passionate about. I wish there was more of this in the world because it changes the relationship with people and their horses, and it's a huge thing. So I appreciate everybody very much.
Yeah, it's very important and awesome the work you're doing. So just
Thank you.
because sometimes people are hanging out and they're not quite sure how to ask a question, I usually count to 10. 10 seconds
Okay.
of silence, and then we call it and then we say, well, it's been great, everybody.
Awesome. Hmm.
See, I told you it feels like an eternity.
It's all good.
All right. Thanks, Danna. Again, everybody that came and everybody that's still here, thank you for sticking around the whole time, and we will see you all very soon.
Awesome. Thank you.